We have late breaking news. A brand new Des Moines Register Mediacom poll shows Kamala Harris beating Donald Trump in the reliably red state of Iowa. This is an A-plus state-of-the-art poll, one of the most reliable in America, especially since Iowa's caucus is the first in the nation. So it's heavily monitored and heavily polled, and the Des Moines Register knows exactly what it's doing. I'll have more on the polls later in the show. I just want to remind you that I've always said this race would reveal itself 48 hours before Election Day. I also said that once Harris feels she's locked up Pennsylvania, she would take the fight to Florida and then Iowa. If you go back and listen, I said her best chances of adding to the Biden map after North Carolina would be Florida, then Iowa, then either Texas or Indiana. Harris has not been able to expand the map with the race this close in Pennsylvania, supposedly this close in Pennsylvania. So why Iowa? What's going on? Iowa is Obama country. He always said he owes it all to Iowa. And both his campaigns in 2008 and 2012 ended in Iowa. His last speech was given in Iowa in 2008 and 2012 as a sign of respect and thanks. So there might be some Obama magic at play here. But more importantly, this Iowa poll could be revealing untold riches in Kamala Harris's electoral map. One thing is for certain, this race is breaking for her. There's no question in the lead up to the weekend, we kept hearing the race was tightening, but it's not. Most of the pollsters are hedging their bets by doing something called herding. Nate Silver wrote about this on his Substack, and I'll talk about herding later on the show. The pollsters are terrified of being wrong, so they're playing it safe by going with the crowd and calling it too close to call. That's the safest take. Too close to call means I don't want to do my job. It's pure cowardice. Nate Silver says most of these pollsters are torturing their numbers. That's the term Nate Silver used, torturing their numbers because they're afraid of drawing attention to themselves. It's like Hollywood. Nobody wants to be first. They want to be second. They want to wait till there's some success, and then they go with the herd. I'll have much more on this later on in the show. This is big news. The race, 48 hours to go, is revealing itself. This is the mop-up for November 3rd, 2024. And you know what that means? We're now 48 hours away from Election Day. Kamala Harris made a surprise appearance on Saturday Night Live. Even though it's live, Trump accused Lorne Michaels of editing Kamala's appearance to make her look funnier than she really is, and now Donald Trump's going to sue NBC for $10 billion. The state of Washington has activated its National Guard in anticipation of violence on and after Election Day. Washington Governor Jay Inslee said he's called up the Guard until Thursday of next week, all based on a Homeland Security report showing an increased threat level surrounding election infrastructure. Last Monday in Vancouver, Washington, hundreds of ballots were destroyed when someone set fire to a drop-off box. ABC News reports that since Friday, 70 million Americans have already voted. Not as many as 4 years ago when COVID was at its height, but way more than in 2016 and 2012. We are seeing record turnout that dwarfs 2020 in swing states like Georgia and North Carolina. Nationwide, however, this is almost half the early voting turnout we saw in 2020 when, if you remember, Americans fearing COVID decided to forsake long election day lines. We're no longer afraid of voting in person. In Bucks County, Pennsylvania, on Saturday, voters waited in line 8 hours to cast their ballots. Some counties in Pennsylvania have run out of absentee ballots. Trump ended Saturday at a rally in North Carolina that, according to the New York Times, was sparsely attended. The upper level said the Times was completely empty and there were empty seats in the lower level. Trump was also in Virginia on Saturday, a state he can't possibly win, where the latest polls show him 6 points behind. Why is he wasting time in Virginia? Because that's where he can draw a crowd. On Thursday, Trump was in New Mexico, another state, just like Virginia, that Trump has no chance of winning, but he can draw a crowd. Trump is running a very undisciplined campaign, literally running all over the map, even chasing crowds in California, another lost cause for him. On Saturday, Trump told the crowd near Roanoke, Virginia, quote, "I am calling for the death penalty for any migrant that kills an American citizen or a law enforcement officer." That's Trump doing what he does best, creating solutions for non-existent problems. During his speech, Donald Trump once again promised to place Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in charge of our nation's health. Trump said, "We will make America healthy again, and RFK Jr. is going to be in charge of that." Here is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. telling us that when it comes to medical science, Americans should do their own research by listening to podcasters like Joe Horse-Paced Rogan.
But you cannot trust medical advice from medical professionals. That doesn't mean that you don't have a great doctor that you should listen to, but you need to take control of your own health care, and you need to question everything.
On Saturday, Kennedy took to social media to promise that when Trump returns to the White House, fluoride will be removed from our drinking water. Fluoride. This is John Birch Society crap that hasn't been heard since the 1950s. Fluoride in the water. According to the New York Times, fluoride was put in our water 80 years ago and is considered by the CDC to be one of the greatest public health achievements of the last century. It protects our teeth. Then again, we're talking Trump supporters, and we're pretty sure teeth aren't an issue with them. Harris is running an incredibly disciplined campaign. Except for a rally in Texas on October 25th, Kamala Harris, unlike Donald Trump, hasn't budged from the blue wall, with occasional trips to Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, and Georgia. Why is she leading in Iowa? She hasn't stepped foot in Iowa. What is happening? To refresh your memory, Biden won 5 states that Hillary didn't in 2016. He won Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Harris is running an incredibly disciplined race, focusing solely on those 5 states that Biden won, the 5 states Biden won that Hillary didn't, plus Nevada, which Hillary did win. The only state Harris has added to Biden's 2020 map is North Carolina, a state Obama and Vice President Biden won in 2008, but lost in 2012. But again, surprising news coming out of Iowa. The Des Moines Register poll late last night shows her beating Trump, and she hasn't been campaigning there. Is this a bellwether that signifies way more strength in the rural heartland? Harris campaigned in North Carolina on Saturday and was interrupted by pro-Palestinian protesters. Harris responded by telling the crowd, "We all want that war in the Middle East to end." Then Harris added she wanted Hamas to release the hostages. So here is Vice President Kamala Harris heckled 2 or 3 times in Charlotte, North Carolina on Saturday. Watch her handle it.
Under Medicare. It's all good. You know what? One of the reasons we are here is because we are fighting for a democracy and the right of people to speak their mind, but right now I am speaking. It's okay, y'all. Democracy can be complicated. It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. This is what democracy looks like. It's all good. It's all good. Hey, listen, it's all good. And look, we all want that war in the Middle East to end. We want the hostages home. And when I am president, I will do everything in my power to make it so.
This is what democracy looks like. This is also what democracy looks like. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. She's the only Palestinian serving in Washington, D.C. She represents Michigan's 10th congressional district. Speaking at a rally for Democrats Friday, sponsored by the United Auto Workers, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib urged everyone to vote, but stop short of endorsing Kamala Harris for president. The Congresswoman later issued a statement that said Trump is a proud Islamophobe plus a serial liar who doesn't stand for peace. The reality is that the Biden administration's unconditional support for genocide is what got us here. This should be a wake-up call for those who continue to support genocide. This election didn't have to be close, unquote. You're looking at a picture of Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib holding up a sign that reads, "Guilty of genocide," while Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed a joint session of Congress for the 4th time back in July. This is what democracy looks like. And if you're going to donate to anybody, you donate to Rashida Tlaib first. Vice President Harris started Saturday in Atlanta, Georgia. 4 million people have already voted in that state. Again, we're looking at record turnout. In 2020, the total number of Georgians who voted was fewer than 5 million. There just aren't enough white men in Georgia for Trump to win it. There just aren't enough white men. This is Obama's electoral college landslide in 2008. You need 270. Obama got 365. John McCain only got 173. In modern politics, this is as close to a landslide we can expect. So, where Harris is spending her time and money tells us where she thinks she is going to win. And that would be Nevada, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, just like Obama. But unlike Obama, she thinks she's going to win Arizona because Biden won it 4 years ago. Based on where she is traveling and where her commercial ad buys are, she is not expecting to win Ohio, Indiana, or Iowa the way Obama did. But what's going on? Now she's leading in Iowa. Does this mean she's going to win all of Maine the way Obama did? Remember, Maine is not a winner-take-all state. We were expecting her to lose the rural parts of Maine the same way Biden did. But is Iowa telling us a new and much rosier story? Now, up until today, it was starting to look like Florida, which Obama won, it was starting to look like Florida wasn't in play. But now I don't know. I can't imagine Florida being in play. But this Iowa poll is cracking the map wide open. If you listen to this show, I told you Harris would take the fight to Florida first, right after she nailed down Pennsylvania. She has not campaigned in Florida once. So, judging by how she spends her time and money, throughout all of October, she saw Pennsylvania as her make or break state. She's ending her campaign in Pittsburgh. Pennsylvania is her Iowa, the same way Obama delivered his last speeches in Iowa. Kamala Harris's last speech will be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She is working Pennsylvania's 19 electoral votes. Up until last night, it was starting to look like this race was coming down to Pennsylvania. That's not just what the A-plus pollsters were telling us, it's what Kamala Harris was showing us. She is, as they say over at NASA, working the problem. And up until now, the problem has been Pennsylvania. Now remember, these races come down to tenths of a percentage point. We know Biden won Pennsylvania by 1.2 percentage points. So I wish I could tell you Obama's 2008 map is the map we're going to see Tuesday night. I wish I could tell you that. I can't right now. But also remember, I told you this race reveals itself 48 hours before Election Day. I have a sneaking suspicion Donald Trump's map is crumbling. I sense a wave, but not a tsunami. Again, this is the final 48. It's when the block of marble reveals the sculpture within. Okay, this is what I think we're looking at. This is Joe Biden's map, his win. He beat Trump with 306 electoral votes to Trump's 232. Biden got 306 electoral votes. Trump got 232. He beat him in the popular vote by 7 million. I do think we'll see a tsunami in terms of the popular vote, but the popular vote doesn't matter in this country. So I think, especially because of this Iowa poll, Kamala Harris traces Joe Biden's 2020 map. I think she picks up all the states he won, plus North Carolina. That gets her to 322 and knocks Donald Trump down to 216. But again, Iowa is now in play. What the F does that mean? Well, it means Trump can't count on the rural vote. So this is what the Kamala Harris massive wave looks like with 48 hours to go with North Carolina. I'm not including Iowa's 6 electoral votes. What I'm showing you is what I think is a realistic expectation. But underneath all of this is the female vote. What is turnout going to be? The more women who vote, the larger her margin of victory. What is it going to be like? We might be seeing what I hope we're seeing, and that is a flood of women who know they got burned in 2016 and will be damned if they allow what happened to Hillary to happen to Kamala Harris. The Washington Post reports a new YouGov poll reveals 1 out of every 8 females in America say they secretly voted for Kamala Harris without telling their significant other. Insignificant other is more like abusive other. If you can't tell your Trump voting husband or boyfriend that you're voting for Kamala Harris, run. Get out of that relationship. But think about that. 1 out of every 8 females say they are secretly voting for Kamala Harris. On Saturday, thousands of women marched in Washington, D.C. and around the country to show support for Kamala Harris and reproductive freedom. Remember, abortion is on the ballot in 10 states, including Arizona and Florida. The Washington Post reports new polling indicates early voting favors Harris by a wide margin. There are 3 separate A-plus polls that show Kamala Harris defeating Donald Trump anywhere between 19 and 29 points. This is massive. This is early voting. Okay? The Post says a new Times Siena poll shows Harris beating Donald Trump. This is early voting. She gets 59%. Trump gets 40% among people who have already cast their ballot. That's a 19% landslide. This Post article says a new ABC poll shows Harris beating Trump. She gets 62%. Trump gets 33% among people who have already cast their ballots. It's almost a 30% margin. In the key battleground state of Pennsylvania, the Washington Post says those 3 polls that I just talked about show Harris leading among early voters in Pennsylvania anywhere between 17% and 35%. There are 3 polls of early voting in Pennsylvania, and the range of Kamala Harris's lead in those 3 polls, the low end, a 17% margin of victory, 35% margin of victory on the high end. What do you think? What do you think we're looking at? President Biden campaigned in his hometown of Scranton, Pennsylvania, where he addressed Carpenter's Local 445 alongside his granddaughter, Natalie. Campaigning in Wisconsin, Donald Trump was plagued by more microphone problems. At one point, he became so flustered, he accidentally simulated oral sex.
I came in today, I said, and this is after 4 of these things. I've been, in all fairness, I mean, I'm a human being, right?
That's subject to debate.
And here's the problem. I said, oh man, it's too low. I said, it's too low. So I had to go. Way too low.
That's from his Netflix special. Here he is Friday in Wisconsin with more microphone problems.
Oh, the mic. Yeah, I think the mic stinks. I think it stinks. Crazy. Oh, that's what I was wondering what the hell they were shouting. I think this mic stinks, by the way.
Of course it stinks. You've been breathing on it. In Warren, Michigan, Friday night, more problems with his microphone.
These mic guys, I'm telling you, I'm having a lot of problems with mics lately. I'm not happy. Get yourself a new contractor, please. And don't pay the bill for this contractor.
Wow.
And then they'll write a story, Trump doesn't pay bills. I pay bills. You know what I do? I pay more than I'm supposed to when they can do a good job. But when they don't do a good job, don't pay your damn bill. That's my first.
Wow, there's something nobody ever knew about Donald Trump. He doesn't pay his bills. Maybe that's why they keep shutting off your microphone in a union state, you stupid turd. Trump doesn't pay his bills, okay? It's why he couldn't hold Thursday's New Mexico rally inside the Albuquerque Convention Center because he still owes the city of Albuquerque $445,000 for a 2019 rally. So I guess he feels the police who were there to protect him didn't do a good job, so he's going to stiff the police. According to NBC News, Trump owes a combined $750,000 for rallies held in Pennsylvania, Texas, Montana, and Arizona, but I think that's lowballing, considering Trump owes the city of El Paso, Texas, at least $500,000 for a rally he held there. Al Jazeera reports Trump owes Minnesota $208,000 and more than $65,000 to the state of Washington. Courting the black vote in Michigan on Friday, Trump commented on his beautiful white skin. Here is Donald Trump talking about his beautiful white skin while his staffers scramble to kill the sound on his microphone again.
Somebody said to me, "Are you glad you did it?" I said, "Absolutely, but I could have been on the best beaches in the world. I own the best beaches in the world. I could have had such time. I could have been at the Great Turnberry in Scotland. I could have been anywhere I wanted to be. I could have had those waves smacking me in the face. I could have said, that white, beautiful white skin that I have would be nice and tan. I got the whitest skin because I never have time to go out in the sun, but I have that beautiful white, and you know what? It could have been beautiful tan."
From his Netflix special. Then Trump criticized the Biden-Harris administration's foreign policy.
They got us into Ukraine. We should have never gone into Ukraine. If I was president, you would have never gone into Ukraine.
Because Putin wouldn't let you go into Ukraine. And by the way, we're not in Ukraine. We're providing weapons. Here's Trump the same night bragging about how a group of historians rated him the greatest president ever.
They actually said, "I'm the greatest president in the history of our country." I said, "Are you talking about the border?" They said, "No, the border too. You're the best we ever had on the border, but you're the best president in the history of our country." And then I said, "Does that include Abraham Lincoln, George Washington? Does that include everybody? How about Lincoln, Washington?"
He's a man baby. This is how he talked to his mother. Here's Trump unable to, here's Trump.
"I'm the greatest president in the history of our country."
I'm the greatest president in the history of the... Have some more Mapo, Donnie. Yes, you are. You're the greatest president in the mouth. There you go. Here's Trump unable to name more than 2 presidents. Oh, come on. Don't do that. Let's see if we can play this.
"Does that include Abraham Lincoln, George Washington? Does that include everybody? How about Lincoln, Washington?"
What about George Lincoln and Abraham Washington? Does that include them? He's an idiot. He only knows 2 presidents. Campaigning in Gastonia, North Carolina on Saturday, Trump didn't just remind the audience he's a genius. He told them why.
But right now it's pure genius. Hey, I have an uncle, my uncle, Uncle John, my father's brother. 41 years at MIT, longest serving professor, has so many degrees, he didn't know what the hell to do with them all in the most complicated. I understand a lot of this stuff, I believe in that. Jack Nicklaus is not going to produce a bad golfer, right? That's the way it works. It's just one of those things, and it's in the family, and it's whatever.
I swear it sounds like Robert Smigel impersonating Donald Trump. I have an uncle. He has more degrees than he knows what to do with this. Trump is a racist, a white supremacist, and he believes it's all in the genes. My uncle taught at MIT, so I don't need to pick up a book. I'm smart. That's how he thinks. He thinks intelligence is like a real estate portfolio. It's something you inherit from your father. So he doesn't have to work hard because it's in his genes. Donald, you're not smart. You're dishonest. Whatever success you've had is because you're dishonest. And the reason you're dishonest is because you're not smart. If you were smart, you'd be honest. Then Trump forgot he was running against Kamala Harris.
Crooked Joe Biden. They don't call him Crooked Joe for a reason. I mean, it's a reason they call him that. He's a crooked guy.
Yeah, there's a reason they call him Crooked Joe. Nobody calls him Crooked Joe except for you. You came up with the nickname. There's a reason they call Trump tertiary syphilis brain Donnie, because he's in the advanced stages of tertiary syphilis. That's why everybody's calling him tertiary syphilis brain Donnie. Everybody's calling him that. This is how Trump operates. He comes up with a nickname, and then he says, hey, everybody's calling him Crooked Joe. There must be a reason. Yeah, because you gave him the nickname. Or he tells a lie about Haitians eating cats and dogs. It gets reported on, and then he says, well, that's what people are saying. I'm just telling you what people are saying. This is how Dick Cheney got us into Iraq. He told Judith Miller of the New York Times, off the record, that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Judith Miller writes a story for the New York Times that an unnamed White House source says Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. And then Dick Cheney goes on Meet the Press and says Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. Even the New York Times is reporting it. Okay? On Fox News, Howard Kurtz asked about Trump's discredited lies about Haitian immigrants.
Your famous line about Springfield, Ohio, and I take your point that 15 to 20,000 legal Haitian immigrants settling in that area causes a lot of friction.
What do you mean you take his point that it causes friction? You mean racism? Well, it's been 2 months since Trump said Haitians are eating pets. He claims he has yet to determine whether it's true, and yet he continues to claim it's true at his rallies.
But when you said, and you know it's gone viral, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, you say you're just reporting what had been said. But why not say now, well, look, that turned out not to be true.
I don't know if
Here's
it's
my
not true.
verdict.
I don't know if it's true or not true.
I don't know if it's true or not true. You said it's true at the debate, and you keep repeating it at your rallies. But that's what we want from a president. We know that the role of the president is to repeat things he's heard or made up without ever checking if it's true.
I read
Eating
something.
the pets, you don't know if it's true or not true? It's been debunked by local officials.
What about the goose, the geese? What about the geese? What happened there? They were all missing.
What about the goose? He's a man-baby mobster. He talks like a man-baby mobster.
What about the goose, the geese? What about the geese? What happened there?
What about the geese, the goose? Huh? What about the geese, the goose?
The goose, the geese.
Okay. And here Trump threatens to tell more lies about the Haitians.
I have no idea. And I mean, there are a lot of stories. There are a lot of other stories that I've heard that are horrible stories. I haven't said it. Maybe I will, maybe I won't.
Maybe I will, maybe I won't. This man was once president, and he wants to be president again.
The goose, the geese.
But don't blame Donald Trump. Don't blame me.
But that's a story that was reported, and I said that. Why don't you go after the newspaper that wrote it? Don't blame me.
Don't blame me. Go after the newspaper that's reporting what I said. Right, Donald?
The goose, the geese.
Here's Donald refusing to back down.
Well, I think it's been debunked by local officials.
I don't think it's been debunked at all. I think nobody talks about it except you.
This man wants to be president again.
I have no idea. I said something. The big problem is that you can't put 30,000 people into a 50,000 person town or city and expect this city to even survive or do well. What they've done to Springfield, Ohio is very, very unfair.
You're from New York City. We cram as many people into New York City. The problem is they're black, you racist. Rudy Giuliani explains it all for us. Rudy Giuliani said Friday that Haitians don't belong in America because they're just not a good fit in America. Appearing on a Christian conservative live stream on Friday, Rudy Giuliani defended Donald Trump's attacks on Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio.
They lived back 200 years ago. They just shouldn't have been taken out of the jungle and placed in the middle of a small town America. That's ridiculous. Or big town America, for that matter.
This is who they are. This is who they are. This is the mop-up for November 3rd, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. Please like this episode. That's how I can remain in your feed. And the best way to help out is to share this episode, to forward it to friends and relatives via email, social media, and wherever. And let me know that you did it. Leave a comment. I read all your comments, and especially when you correct me, I thank you. By the way, I was dating things 2023 on the last show. It was 2024. There were a couple of glitches in the last show. Please go over to shopdavidfeldman.com and pick up some junk you don't need, like this souvenir from the 2024 election. It's my worst case scenario map on a coffee mug. You might want to pick that up. She just needs to get the blue wall, and she arrives at 270 with 40 credible sexual assault allegations against Donald Trump. You may want to pick up the Predator mug, and after the election, you're going to want to make peace with your MAGA moron relatives at Thanksgiving. So why not pick up a MAGA cap for them? They won't notice that it reads low IQ individual on the back. And of course, this is one of my favorites. It's Donald Trump in Edvard Munch's The Scream. It's a beautiful cup. Or if you want to disabuse me of the notion that I've cultivated a sophisticated audience by the Hope You're in the Mood for Diarrhea Chef's Apron. This is my biggest seller. This is all the other stuff that I want you to buy. Nah, this is what they buy. I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea, the Chef's Apron. My sister is going to be wearing it for Thanksgiving. In a sign, the United States Supreme Court might call balls and strikes fairly when it comes to the 2024 election. The Republicans' emergency appeal of a Pennsylvania state Supreme Court's ruling that favored Harris was rejected on Friday. Now, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which does have a Democratic majority, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court had ruled voters whose mail-in ballots got rejected because they weren't signed properly or weren't returned in a security envelope would be given provisional ballots to fill out. And Republicans challenge this. They want the ballots completely discarded without those voters being given a second chance. But the Supreme Court upheld the Pennsylvania Supreme Court's ruling. And if you don't fill out your ballot properly in Pennsylvania, you'll get a provisional ballot. Now, more Republicans are filling out absentee and mail-in ballots, and they're stupid. They're the ones who are going to be getting their ballots rejected. They're the ones who aren't going to sign it properly or include the security envelope. It's in the best interests of the Republican Party to make sure that the idiots who vote for Donald Trump get a second chance, get provisional ballots, so they get a second chance to vote for him. They don't want it. They don't want it easy for anybody to vote. This is why they're going to lose. In the lead up to January 6th, the United States Supreme Court did call balls and strikes pretty fairly when it refused to hear a case filed by the state of Texas that challenged Pennsylvania's election results that awarded Joe Biden 19 electoral votes. Speaker Mike Johnson was a backbencher back in 2020, but became a Trump favorite after he agreed to write an amicus brief in support of this lawsuit, this bogus lawsuit. And Johnson succeeded in getting more than 125 House Republicans to sign his amicus brief, despite the lead counsel for the House Republican leadership back then warning them that Johnson's amicus brief was, quote unquote, unconstitutional. Mike Johnson tricked a lot of low information Republican members of Congress into signing this amicus brief. In his request to get Republicans to sign his amicus brief, Johnson threatened his Republican colleagues. He said President Trump will be paying attention to the names of those who signed it and those who didn't. He's like Santa Claus. He's going to check the list to see who's been naughty and who's been nice. The Guardian reports that the Trump campaign is already putting into motion legal challenges, accusing the election of being stolen from Donald Trump. Trump is already peppering his speeches with accusations of the vote being rigged, even insisting that he won New Mexico in 2020 and that he won it in 2016. He didn't. And he said, if they counted the votes properly, I would have won New Mexico. But you know who's paying careful attention to everything Donald Trump is doing and saying right now? This guy, Jack Smith, the special counsel in the Washington, D.C. election interference case. Because the Supreme Court only granted partial immunity to former presidents for crimes they committed in the Oval Office, the crimes Donald Trump is committing right now do not fall under the protective umbrella of any presidential immunity because he's not president now. He's committing these crimes as a private citizen. Consider this, Donald. Consider this. The Guardian reports that as most legitimate pollsters are now winding down their operations with fewer and fewer polls, newly created Republican pollsters are ramping up their polls of battleground states. There has been a large swath of newly created partisan Republican pollsters. They were created after 2000 as part of a concerted effort to make it look like momentum favors Donald Trump. The New York Times reports that there's been a surge of 37 Republican-aligned polls flooding the averages during the past week. 30 out of 37 of these Republican pollsters show Donald Trump defeating Kamala Harris in key battleground states. The Guardian reports these phony polls are already poisoning, contaminating the Real Clear Politics averages, one of the averages cited most by Republicans. Meanwhile, Trump and Elon Musk are also claiming momentum by pointing to how well Trump is doing in the betting markets. Believe it or not, people bet on a presidential race. And Trump and Elon Musk are now claiming momentum, saying Trump is doing very well in the betting markets. But the New York Times reports that the betting markets are being manipulated to create the perception that Trump is more favored to win than he actually is. According to the Times, 4 separate Polymarket accounts. Polymarket is one of these websites that takes your bets, and you can go there and you can see the odds on who's going to win. According to the Times, 4 separate Polymarket accounts linked to one French national placed a total of $29 million betting that Donald Trump would win. That's enough to move the odds in Trump's favor. Trump then, according to The Guardian, cited his increased betting odds in a speech recently saying, quote, "I don't know what the hell it means, but it means we're doing pretty well." They are creating the false illusion that in the lead up to November 5th, Trump was winning. But it got stolen from him. It got stolen from him. Polls, good polls, are the guardrails of democracy. They are used around the world to help certify elections to determine whether there has been actual fraud. We know it's a fraudulent election when the exit polls and the polling averages show a different result than what the winning candidate is claiming. With these new polls, these Republican polls, Trump is once again attempting to create a false narrative, an alternative reality, so that MAGA Republicans will believe he's more popular than he actually is. Make no mistake. After Donald Trump loses on Tuesday, he will insist this is a stolen election. He will say, "I was leading in all the polls. All the good polls showed me winning." You're leading in the fake polls. Donald Trump is absconding with one of the most important tools that prevent voter fraud. He's creating false polls in order to falsely claim voter fraud. Well, the Washington Post, they're very picky. They don't allow their voting averages to be contaminated. The Washington Post's latest averages of A-plus polls shows Harris beating Donald Trump in Pennsylvania by about a point. The Post warns it's tight in Pennsylvania. I should mention the Guardian's polling averages show Trump now leading slightly in Pennsylvania, and the New York Times polling averages now show Harris and Trump tied in Pennsylvania, with Trump slightly in the lead. But there are garbage polls contaminating the averages. The Pareto principle is based on the 1906 observations of Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto. Pareto came up with what is called the Pareto distribution, or the 80-20 principle, which over time evolved into the idea that you could apply the 80-20 principle to the stock market, where there's no question that 80% of the gains are made by 20% of the companies that make up the S&P 500. You could apply the 80-20 rule to your work habits. There are probably only 20 things you need to do each day that brings value to your company and your reputation, while the other 80% is just busy work. As Election Day nears, we are finding the 80-20 rule also applies to pollsters. 20% of the polls can be trusted, and 80% are just plain garbage. And because there's a lot of money to be made in polling, pollsters want to appear as accurate as they possibly can. They're thinking about the next election. On November 6th, the day after the election, we will learn which pollsters got it right and which pollsters got it wrong. But some pollsters, too many pollsters, are kind of sitting this election out. They are less concerned about getting it right and more concerned about not doing worse than their competitors. There's a lot of money to be made running a polling unit. What we are witnessing right now, according to experts like Nate Silver and others, what we're witnessing is something called herding. That's where brand name pollsters are more concerned with protecting their brand. So when they release their polls, they hew towards groupthink, the general consensus of other pollsters. They're more concerned with what the other pollsters are telling them than they are what the people they're polling are telling them. In effect, besides polling voters, they are also polling pollsters to make sure they're in line with the agreed upon narrative that this is a razor-thin race. The easiest thing to do is say it's too close to call. Well, you're not doing your job. You can't be held accountable if you say it's too close to call. Nate Silver writes over at his Substack that pollsters looking for future work are only concerned about making sure they don't rank near the bottom when November 6th comes around and their work is judged. Silver writes that the easiest way for pollsters to hedge their bets is to release numbers showing the race to be a dead heat. He goes on to say there's only a 1 in 175 million probability that one single pollster can keep taking polls that show the race constantly within the margin of error. He says it's statistically impossible for that to occur. Silver says the laws of probability dictate that we will see outlier polls showing one of the two candidates with a lead not commensurate to the herd. What we are seeing, according to The Guardian, is cowardice. Very few brand name pollsters are willing to report their data as is without first massaging the numbers so as not to stand out. Nate Silver says they're torturing the numbers so they don't stand out. The Guardian writes, quote, this near monolithic picture emerging from multiple polls has triggered suspicions among some analysts of herding around state poll averages by pollsters cautious of being proved wrong for the third time running after significantly underestimating Trump's support in 2016 and 2020. In other words, many pollsters are terrified of undercounting the so-called stealth Trump voter as they did in 2016 and 2020. So they are weighting their polls to make sure previous Trump voters are included in the sample to create what they think is an even distribution across the political spectrum. But this methodology has been discredited. And now many are suggesting there is an overcorrection in the polls favoring Trump and undercounting Kamala Harris. And we're seeing it with this Iowa poll. The Des Moines Register broke with the herd. What's going on? What's going on? Well, the bottom line is Kamala Harris is going to win. Because, and I know this because there are legitimate polls and illegitimate polls, the same way there are real election results and what Donald Trump is going to claim after November 5th. She is going to win. The question is, by how much? Because Donald Trump is running, expect the worst. I got news for you. This isn't the most important election in our lifetime. It's only the most important election in Donald Trump's lifetime. He's going to lose, and he knows what the consequences will be. That means our fight for democracy has only just begun. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you so much for listening to me. Please share this episode. Please subscribe to my newsletter. Please subscribe to my channel. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room. Thank you for showing up. They set the clocks back, so everything was confusing. Be nice to yourself. I know everybody's stressed out. I know that. That just means you love your country. That's a good thing, to be stressed out. Remember, never forget this feeling, and hold it with you after she's president, and keep fighting for your country. Constant vigilance. Don't take anything for granted. They took abortion away, and they will take same-sex marriage away. Please check out the garbage over at shopdavidfeldman.com. Stuff you don't need, like my worst-case scenario map on a coffee mug, the Predator mug, the MAGA cap, Donald Trump. I got to do a better job selling this shit. I should do a better job doing. And Donald Trump and Edvard Munch's The Scream. And, of course, I hope you're in the mood for Diarrhea, the Chef Apron. I sound like the canvassers working for Elon Musk knocking on doors in Pennsylvania. Boy, are they getting ripped off. The canvassers, they're lying to Elon Musk. It's a beautiful thing. He's paying all this money, and they're going, yeah, we knocked on those doors. We knocked on these doors. Okay, I don't know if I'm doing a show. I'm definitely doing a show early Tuesday morning at 2:30. Depending on what I'm looking at, I might. I mean, if there's this Iowa poll, things are folding in underneath Donald Trump right now. So I may do a show tomorrow, but definitely 2:30 early Monday morning. I don't need to tell my listeners to vote. I know you've already done that. Okay. Take a deep breath. It's not just going to be okay. It's going to be better. It's going to be better.